Hey, I'm Madison.
And I'm Lisa. Here we're outside in an amazing venue enjoying the outdoors.
Yes, so this week we're in John chapter 6, verses 1 to 13. So open your Bibles and we'll get started.
John chapter 6. Jesus feeds the 5,000. After this, Jesus went across Lake Galilee. Many people followed him because they saw the miracles he did to heal the sick. Jesus went up on a hill and sat there with his followers. Jesus looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him. He said to Philip, "Where can we buy bread for all these people to eat?" Jesus asked Philip this question to test him. Jesus already knew what he planned to do. Philip answered, "We would all have to work a month to buy enough bread for each person here to have only a little piece." Another follower there was Andrew. He was Simon Peter's brother. Andrew said, "Here is a boy with 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 little fish. But that is not enough for so many people." Jesus said, "Tell the people to sit down." This was a very grassy place. There were about 5,000 men who sat down there. Then Jesus took the loaves of bread, he thanked God for the bread and gave it to the people who were sitting there. He did the same with the fish. He gave them as much as they wanted. They all had enough to eat. When they had finished, Jesus said to his followers, "Gather the pieces of fish and bread that were not eaten. Don't waste anything." So they gathered up the pieces that were left. They filled 12 large baskets with the pieces that were left of the 5 barley loaves.
Well, here we have one of my favourite stories in the Bible. I love the story of how Jesus fed the 5,000. Can you imagine sitting there in the crowd, listening to Jesus for hours and hours, and then all of a sudden people realise that they're hungry. And this little boy, sitting in amongst the thousands of people, has got a little pot lunch that his mum had made for him earlier. And the Bible tells us that Andrew, the disciple, went around and asked people, "Does anybody have anything? Have you got anything that you can share?" And you know, the only one that came forward and was willing to give what he had to Jesus was this little boy. And the only thing he had, it wasn't a huge pot lunch, was 2 little fish and 5 loaves of bread. I'm sure he was hungry himself, but he was willing to give what he had to Jesus, not knowing what would happen to it, not knowing what they would do, but he was willing to give the little that he had to Jesus, and then he stepped back and seen a miracle.
Okay, so this week my challenge to you is this. Just like that little boy in John chapter 6, who gave what little he had to Jesus, then we can do exactly the same. We can give our kindness, we can give our time, we can give our friendship, and we can be amazed at what God can do with it. He can take a little and make an awful lot out of it, can't he? Sure. So that's my challenge this week. Just be willing with what you have and give it to Jesus.
Great. That's a great challenge.
Yeah.
And we look forward to hearing the stories of how Jesus has used you to help other people. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.